with Stacie Shea, our special Community Matters edition. Today, my guest is the president of the Austin chapter of the NAACP. Welcome, Mr. Nelson Linder. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, good morning. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. So today, what I want to chat with you about, as you know, there's been a lot of stuff going on with the city politics and things, right?
Yes.
And even since our last chat last week, there's been some new developments that relate to what we were speaking about last week. So I'm kind of glad that we get to kind of address it now with this information that we have. So
I am too.
Can you give us just a quick rundown on, so they've reinstated the camping ban. That's going to kind of be the focus of our talk, but we're going to talk about it a little bit more. But they've reinstated the camping ban. Why is that problematic for our community?
Well, because first of all, this issue has to be properly vetted. It's not a simple issue. If you're going to reinstate something, you've got to take your time and do it the right way. What we're doing is really, we're reacting, responding, and we're doing things and not considering the outcome. I mean, for example, they're not vetting so-called areas to put locations at. Those areas are disproportionate in East Austin. These people just don't get it. Management is one thing, politics is another thing. And very seldom in the city do they ever come together. We all know, number one, if you're gonna do something like this, do it in an equitable manner. Now, if you don't care, we get that. Maybe you don't. If you got any sense at all, look at the entire city and put things in certain places. But the city of Austin, it's too difficult for them to do something fair that includes Black and brown people. And so here we go again. They make a mistake. They apologize. All these lists show up in East Austin. I'm saying, well, who in the hell did this? What were you thinking? So going forward, the problem is they don't have folks who are committed, who understand how to do these things the right way and include everybody in a fair manner. So we're back to square one. You've got to do this because the voters asked for it, but you got to do it the right way. And we're going to demand that.
Oh, thank you. So I spoke with, since we last spoke, I spoke with Jao Paulo Conley from Austin Justice Coalition, right? And he was speaking about that, like the equitable distribution of resources and having the resources for those experiencing homelessness be in a balanced way spread across the city instead of everything all in one place. And then next thing you know, like the very next week, this map comes out and it's weighted 70% on the, and I know that they weren't, but it's like, okay, so they know that this is what the community wants. So how is it that this keeps happening? Because you mentioned, you said yet again. So let's open that can of worms about yet again city policies being detrimental to poor Black and brown communities in Austin, Texas. When you say yet again, what are you talking about?
Well, here's our problem, and I'm doing this as politely as possible. Okay?
Why? You can hash it out with me. I'll put it on Patreon and make people pay to see it.
Okay. Here's the thing: we like people to go downtown and represent our interests. And we expect them to be fully informed and motivated to do the right thing. But if you don't know, you don't know. And I have to assume if you do the same thing over and over again, maybe you're either misinformed or perhaps you just don't get it. So let me help you get it. We're talking about having a seat at the table. I keep telling these people here, you don't have a damn seat at the table. If you did, we would have these same issues.
It's true, right? We get to sit at the table, but we don't have a seat at the table.
When you go to the table, lay out the plan of action. For example, okay, Prop B passed. So we got to fix this problem, right? So we're gonna do this the right way. Here's the map of the entire city. That can't be that complicated. But keep in mind now, this is also a political issue.
Right.
And because it's a political issue, some folks don't want to go there. So you got the city manager trying to do all the dynamics of this thing, which he can't really do because he's not a politician. So it takes a political leadership to say, look, here's what we want. We want this in 1, this in 2, this in 3, this in 4, and down the line. Now you got a comprehensive plan.
Right. Because if you say, hey, this is wrong, if you say this is wrong, but there's no solution, then what are they supposed to do? If you don't give them any, if like you said, if they don't know,
well, you got these folks who voted for this ban. Look, you got these folks who voted for this thing, okay? They passed Part B for a lot of reasons. some of these same folks, they don't want things in the neighborhood. So they go ahead and they pass this, man, but they're making sure it goes disproportionate to Black and brown districts. And therein lies a problem. So if you're a politician, you got to demand, number one, that first of all, you don't tell us where this thing goes. You have a vote. We're going to do this the right way. And every district will be treated fairly. But that's too difficult because in Austin, Texas, you got to yell, you got to scream, you got to do your homework. And demand, number one, they get this thing right. And for some reason, we don't understand that.
It breaks my heart. But here, just let's take a minute while we're there. Do you mind? I'm going to share my screen real quick and I'm going to pull up the map. So can y'all see that? All right, you can see it.
I can see, yeah.
So here's the map of where these every blue dot over here. So let's see, this right here, this big line through the middle, that's 35. That's I-35. This is Mopac over here. You notice there is nothing west of Mopac. There's very little right through here. And everything is in this Eastern Crescent. That's what we call that in our city, right? Is the Eastern Crescent. How is this? This is, maybe I'm going to reach, but if I am, I trust you to correct me and rein me in, as you always do. Thank you. How is this not a continuation of the 1928 city plan? How is this not just an extension of them dealing with the Negro problem? And I say this like this because, as we discussed last time, upwards of 40% of the population in Austin experiencing homelessness is Black people. So anything that deals with folks experiencing homelessness is going to disproportionately impact people of color. So we can't separate them. Like you said last time, they go together. So how do we address this then? All of these places, and I'm sorry, one more thing. I was reading one of the places is actually Chicano Park. Like one of the options for where they're wanting to put one of these encampments is at Chicano Park. And I don't think that that's accidental either. I just kind of feel like, and again, rein me in if I'm wrong, but I just kind of feel like there is an intentional, and I don't like this word choice here, but for ease of, and I'll clear it up in a minute, but an intentional devaluing of the spaces in which Black and brown people inhabit. I say I don't like the word choice because I do have issues with folks having an issue with living near folks that are unhoused. I don't think that it's such a terrible thing if we learned how to engage as a society with folks that are very, very different socially than us. And so I don't have so much anger about you're putting this, encampment around other folks, because then we sound just like the people on the west side of the highway. But there does need to be balance and equanimity, and you certainly don't want to put. It's not like the spaces in Chicano Park specifically are derelicted spaces. Those are heavily used spaces by the community. So how is this not just an extension of dealing with the Negro problem and the 1928 city plan?
Well, let's look at the similarities. The same folks who created the Negro plan were the same folks who punched the tickets. In this plan, the same folks who are doing this are the same folks who are punching the tickets. That means they're decision makers. What it means is these folks are intent upon doing things their way. And they feel it's politically possible, without being held accountable, to just put Black folks where they want to put them. That's why you see the gap here in Mopac. And all people who are at the table, allegedly, said, wait a minute, this is not going to happen. You got 4 minority districts. They got to come together and say, wait a minute, we want a fair plan. We're not going to accept anything less than the truth. They 4+2 votes in most cases. So that tells you, number one, the same people are doing the same thing and they're not being checked. You have to have check and balances. So our people are not doing the checks and balances. I mean, for example, this morning, according to Allison Alter, she says, well, it's just being vetted. Is it being vetted? Why the hell is it being released to the public? If you vet something, you check it out first, right? Now
right, like somebody, how come there was nobody at the table that said this ain't going to pass the muster with the folks? Like how?
Because here's the thing, and I'm including everybody. If you're Black and brown in this city, you have to have the courage to blow the whistle. It might be unpopular, but that's why you're there. If you don't want to be there, go ahead and admit it. If you're gonna deal with these folks in this town, downtown, you gotta get in their face, call a spade, and say, look, here's how we're gonna do this. And if we're not, I'm leaving the damn table and I'm gonna turn it upside down. If you can do that, you can solve the problem. But guess what? We don't want to be angry. We don't want to call a spade, and as a result, we got this same circle happening again. Now, because we came forward, and I've been calling them out all day long, they're going to try to make some adjustments. But thank you for showing me what you were really thinking. So now we're involved again. Our hearts, our pulse, and it's so unnecessary. But you got to understand what you're doing. When you get to the table, you got to know why you're there and what you're supposed to damn do. You're supposed to prevent racism, prevent inequity, make sure that Black folks finally, 2021, get some justice. It's not hard to do, but you can't talk out both sides of your mouth. Your job is to guard and make sure that resources are equitable, that these people or population are treated fairly. That's the other thing. Going to these locations are not guaranteeing fair treatment. You said it earlier. The Black folks, 40% of the population, because we've been displaced anyway, that's a whole other conversation. We want to create sites and locations where people are treated as human beings, where they're safe, they can have good food. That's the other conversation that's not even there yet. But at least put the plan out the right way and get folks to what the hell they're doing. So in our communities, we have a deficit in leadership for a lot of reasons. And I keep telling people, that's why we question the whole government. You said the manager is dealing with resources. He is not a politician. To fix these issues, you got to be a politician, know where everybody is, and say, look, here's where we're going to go. You need political leadership. But we don't have that. And as a result, we have these same conversations.
I think it's really unfortunate that like the voices that are speaking out for this that are in our city government are so, there's, it's a candle in the wind and out in the desert, like this one little voice, and they go, oh, okay, tap, 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 tap. And then we're going to go over here and do what we want to do anyway, no matter what. And I wanted to kind of circle back around though to two things that you said. When you said, I'm to the point now where it's like, tell us to your face what it is that you're really trying to accomplish. If we've brought up all these things, there's been all these advisory boards, all these commissions, all these studies that have been done that have made these recommendations to the city management, to the city government, and yet we still have all of these same problems. So we can't claim ignorance on this, Mr. Linder.
No, we can't.
So again, like I asked you last time, at what point do we hit them brakes and start turning tables?
Well, we're already there. We kind of passed that point. But here's what we can do. My first question is, when you're making this kind of decision and consideration, where is the equity office? Is that person at the table saying?
Were they at the table? Who's at the table making these decisions?
And the question is, if you have political representation, why don't you raise that question? Then tell your community, tell your constituents who's at their table. I want to know. That's the first question. And I guarantee you, the right people who get paid good money to make these kind of decisions probably wasn't there. If they weren't there and they were their voices, we have a whole nother issue. See, that's what it gets back to. When these guys have these kind of policy decisions, you got to make sure that your people, whoever they are, have the ability to analyze, assess, and make the necessary adjustments. So that's kind of where we are right now. This tells me that if they were there, they didn't stop this. And I'm telling you, if you're an equity officer in the city, you can stop yourself by raising a question. Because all I can do is call people in. I got a call rather late. Call me when you said, this ain't looking right. You can text me, hey, Nelson, we need your help. But that's what we got to do. We got to stand up and say, you know what? We're beyond, at this point, compare. We got to make our voices heard. We got to be there and demand, number one, they fix this thing right away. And they're going to fix it. But the insult is already there.
Can we talk about that? I do really want to talk about just general equity and insult and injury to insult and everything that's been going on in Austin here. What are some things, because I know that you're out there doing things all the time. What are some ways that we can address, because you said if they're at the table, they're not being listened to, or they're not being disruptive enough while they're at the table. I can tell you from personal experience, I've sat at a lot of tables, as you know, and that's what I do is I put spokes or sticks in the spokes of tires. I'm the one that's going to ask that question. They were like, well, dang, we weren't even talking about that, but I guess that's what we need to be talking about. Perhaps we'll adjourn and come back next time. And then they'll cut the meeting, and then I don't get to come to the next one. And then I come to the one after that, after they've got it all straightened up again, But how do we get these people to listen to us? Because what I have witnessed, what I have seen, is they will invite these people to the table. They'll say, yeah, come on, come sit in on our meeting.
Right.
And come tell us stuff. And then the person will get to talk for this much time at the very beginning of the meeting. They may or may not get to rebut things that are being said in the meeting. And then the things will just kind of get skimmed over like it's just a little piece of the agenda that they're doing, but they don't actually have to address it, because this is also what I discovered, which I'm sure you know, some of these organizations don't have any obligation to the community. Some of these organizations that you would think, like the Food Policy Board, for example, zero obligation to the community as far as taking community input or anything like that. But these are things that are like, this is base need. This is the food of our community. And as we saw with the snowpocalypse, what they call that, the freeze, there are disparately impacted demographics within our city that would be directly impacted by having somebody who thought about them on the Food Policy Board. So how do we get, I think that that's a root thing. Like, how do we get to where, okay, they'll pat our heads and say, okay, we got this Food Policy Board. They're going to talk about this. Oh, we got this African-American Quality of Life Advisory Committee. We're going to, but then there's no obligation for them to listen to them. How do we get around that?
Well, here's the thing. Right now I'm sitting in a trailer outside my office because my office was damaged during that winter storm. So was the whole network. And so I'm in a trailer while my office has been prepared for 2 months. It took me a week to set this whole thing up. So I know because I'm here. I can feel my karma because I go through the same thing. You got to know what people are going through, because that's what I do. If you know, you have a much better perspective on it. So go to the table knowing what's going on, you can change things. Short story. Fannie Lou Hamer back in the 1960s, who was a Black pioneer in Mississippi. She went to a meeting. They went 28 miles to a meeting because there was a hearing taking place in Mississippi about Black folks, and they felt the leadership was not there. She went to the meeting, threatened with her life, went inside the meeting without permission, disrupted the whole process, and gave one of the most powerful speeches in our history. It was so powerful, people like LBJ and others said, you know what? We fear her more than Martin Luther King. They said they didn't fear King, but what she was saying, people might just listen. So here's my question. If you are a Black person or you're just a concerned person in these meetings, if it ain't right, time out, disrupt it. You can do it. Because if they address you, guess what? Everybody's looking. But if you don't disrupt it, because you can't, who said Robert Rules Order? Robert Rules of Order, hey, look, you know what? When things are out of order, and this is out of order, you have to disrupt them respectfully. So wait a minute. This process is unfair, it's racist, and it's certainly about equity. We're going to do this all over. And then demand to say that. They're not going to remove you. Now, you can't be cussing folks out. Let's be very, very clear. Just stand up and lay out the plan of action about what you're doing. And if you're a city official, it's definitely not going to touch you. But you can't sit and let people pour water in your face and act like, they didn't do it. And that's what the problem is. If you're in these meetings, I don't really go anymore. I don't have to. I get the word anyway. You have to be disruptive intellectually. Let them know that there's a whole group of folks out there that have been disrespected. This is going to stop today. That's really all you got to do. And when you do that, you might not be patted on the head or the most favorite person in town, but I guarantee you this nonsense will stop. So that's what you need. And I'm telling you right now, in government, we don't have those kind of people. And we have to fix that problem.
And I think thank you for that. And I think you're right. Like, show up. And I think one of the things that we have going for us, and this is actually how I got to speak at the Food Policy Board meeting, is I didn't know. And so I'm a regular person. I'm not in that circle. And so you could claim ignorance first time you go into the room. Like, I don't know what y'all's process is, but I really want to speak. Certainly you want to hear from the community, right? Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Let me say what I got to say in here.
That's right.
And I love tossing tables. Like, that's my favorite thing to do. And I'm going to follow up, just kind of circle back as far as tossing tables goes. I'm going to follow up to see who was at the table to build the map. I'm going to follow up and see, like, who made this? Why did y'all pick these spots, And then, so the other thing that we encounter in our community is a lack of outreach as far as like when these meetings are, when you can be, how to get engaged in the process when you're participating. When do I go to these meetings where they're discussing these things? Do you think that that's intentional? This is kind of speculative stuff, but do you think that there is an intentional breakdown to make certain information a little bit harder to get to for some people than for others?
It's always been intentional, but it's also very cultural. I mean, for example, I got a text last night at 8:40 about some kind of meeting. Now, listen, first of all, I'm working all day from 5 o'clock on. At 8:30, my mind is just about half dull. So I need a little warning about what's going on, because email meetings like that ain't important in the first place. Here's the thing. We got too many meetings and not enough communication. The bottom line is, if I'm in a meeting and I'm carrying our own interests, my job is to inform you. Everybody ain't got to be there, but somebody got to be there to make sure that people know. When these guys post these meetings, they're not going to everybody, and the folks who down there not even telling us most of the time. That process is upside down. If you go to a meeting, you're there not just to cover yourself, but to make sure everybody know what was said and what was done. That's what we're not doing. We have to make the adjustment. We're a cultural people. Outsiders have to go to a meeting, sit at a table all day and go to sleep. That's not what we do. We got to make sure number one, know why are you there, what is your goal when you're there, and what's the end result. When you leave that, make a phone call, hey Nelson, here's what happened today. We're on it, but we're not doing that. So it's a culture issue, and they know it. So our elected officials and other folks in authority have to make sure they change that process. For example, the food policy board, who the hell are those folks? It says most of us need food. What's the makeup of these people?
Right, there's a few
people. Who are they, right? And I'm not saying it's not a few black folks separate, but I'm saying you got to find.
But who are they?
Who are they? And what's their relationship to the issues that we have? So this whole thing has to be revamped.
There's not one farmer on the food policy board.
Yeah. Well, see, here we go again. So our people who are elected officials make these appointments have to ensure they put the right people there. That's the other issue.
Can I talk about their process on that too? Just specifically, because I was appalled. I was appalled when I realized that this is how some of these boards are. When their spot opens up, because they rotate out, they don't stay on it forever. When their spot opens up, there is a blatant and direct ask. Hey, who do you want to replace you? Go ahead and make your recommendation to replace you so that we can keep everything in line with how it's going right now. That's what they said in the meeting. And it's like, okay, so then how is it not a cabal? How is it not like, no, you need to, and a lot of them do that. And then the leadership just kind of bounces around, I don't understand how we can break out of that if we can't show up because we don't know about it. And like on your website, we can go on the website, we see where the meetings are and everything else, right? Somebody wants to know about food policy, it's near impossible to find it. Somebody wants to find the recommendations that have been made to the city for African American quality of life related things. It's near impossible to find on the city website. But you have to know which organizations were part of it. I can't stand it. It upsets my head and heart.
Well, here's a partial answer to what you just said. I've been on the AARC board for almost since its inception. You know why? Yeah. The NAACP did an initial study that started the quality of life. When that became a commission, Councilmember Danny Thomas said, look, we're going to make sure that certain organizations, because they did the work, are permanent members.
They have to be on there. But
so I've been there since 2000 when it was started. And
but it's not just you.
No, it's not just me. But here, I'm going further. I'm just explaining who I am. We also added the NAACP because they had to. And we demanded also the Urban League and some other Capital City Chamber are there because these organizations have responsibility. So what I'm saying is, any question I can find it, I do it all the time. There's a reason for that. The city of Austin's not going to do that. And by the way, they don't appoint us either. The organizations like NAACP, we're not appointed.
Right.
So every time there's a politician in office, guess what? They typically pick somebody else. But what I'm saying, though, more importantly, you got to care about the issues. See, I've had plenty of chances to go do something else. That's no, because this thing is upside, it's gone forever. I remind them all the time who created this process, what we want. We want resources. But everybody can't do that. So what I'm saying is, we have to inform everybody and have our own network of doing that. I can't find all these meetings, but you got city council people. They get this stuff. I want to know who's on these boards, what's our background, is it equity? Every question to us is it equitable, and do they understand the issues? See, if you didn't answer the right questions, you would never solve this problem.
Right. And speaking of like keeping up with like city council things, I have I've got a standing, I just wrapped that season. We did a 6-month standing monthly interview to keep up with what's going on with city council and everything. And what I initially wanted to do, which proved to be much harder than I thought it was going to be, I was like, certainly they can just email me the agenda the week before, right? So
right.
So I can be like super studied up and like show the agenda on the show so that folks can go if they want to sign up to speak about it. Mr. Linder, no, sir. Like, it is not that simple. It is not that simple, but I would love to see something.
Well, here's a good thing now with COVID-19 being on the wane, so to say, you get a lot more physical council meetings, which to me suits my process much better because you can show up, and I've done for almost 20 years, sign up and you can speak. I'll tell you a short story. Some of these virtual meetings, I signed up and I just disappeared. They couldn't find me. Hell, even I know where the hell I was. So when something is physical, they can't do that.
Right.
When you show up and speak and look at these people, all of them, and talk to them, that's a whole different process.
Right. Tell me to
so
my
that's
face.
Going to happen pretty soon, right?
Because, I like to go to all the meetings and I sit there and I look and I make my faces and, I ask unrelated questions and things based on the fact that I understand, like you were saying, like there's lack of communication between all of these different entities. But I buzz around all of them. And so I've got like a slightly different, like you in all these different rooms, it looks different from you to you because you can see how all the different things play together, more so than even some of the people that are in the rooms officially. They don't see how it all plays together. So everything being so siloed, I think, is very damaging for our community.
Absolutely.
So let me go on a hot topic real quick. Is that potentially, possibly, maybe a role that the Black Embassy was going to play as far as kind of being a connector for all of those things? Because I've always felt like there absolutely needs to be a place where we can go and see everything.
And I think the Black Embassy idea is to do that, so to say. But keep this in mind. We're a large community still. And no one organization can cover all those bases. It's got to be a comprehensive approach. They might be the headquarters. Let's do it this way. An embassy is kind of a headquarters. It could be the headquarters where all these branches address this, and that. But right now, there are already organizations that's doing similar work. Mm-hmm. So what they're doing is you want the resources to come there, then they can be properly distributed. Meanwhile, our job is still the same. Support that idea, which is to address these inequities based on systemic racism, and basically not destroying the resource where we need to go. So that's a location with different arms. We all got to support that, but at the same time, do our own jobs as independent organization. That strengthens the process.
I love that. I love that concept. Like, because I think that's one of the things that's like kind of panicked the community. It's like, well, if it's all right here, then what about everything else? What about everybody else? It's like, no, we still have everybody else. Like everybody else
keep
still
our eyes
got
on
our
the
work.
Okay. I mean, keep your eyes on what the end result is.
Which is
number one. We got to make sure the resources are here to address what racism created, which is a lack of resources. That's what it was, really. With resources, we did great. We know that by now.
We do.
But we got to be very, very careful that when we get into that process, that we don't make the same mistakes. That all of us understand, whether you're at the embassy or not, you have to be on the same page and do your work wherever you are. You might not be in East Austin. You might be in Southeast Austin. The issues are the same to a lesser degree. We're on the same page if we like, primarily. We have to widen our scope to make sure that we're fighting wherever we are. There's not one location, it might be the headquarters, but we have many arms and many branches. And that's a whole different concept. Every army has that.
Yes. And of course, like we're not a monolith. We're not but
we don't have to be.
We can't have a mission. We can't have a similar inline. I think that's the difference in our times with this revolution that we're in right now, between this one and the one in the 60s and 60s.
Right.
There was a very, very public focused one mission. These are the asks that every organization is working towards, and they each had their ways of going, but their mission and their asks were the same. And I feel like we're missing that in this revolution.
Well,
how do we fix that?
It's very difficult because at least in the 60s, you had people in similar locations. We had actual community. So that's different. Today, you've got disintegration, you've got technology, you got infiltration.
Disintegration, one of my favorite descriptors for this. Can we circle back around to that and you give us a little bit more information on that? You don't have to do it right this second, you can finish, but yeah, let's talk about that in a minute.
Sure. Eugene Robinson wrote a book called Disintegration, and he told you what had happened over the past 40 years of Black people, how it used to be, how it is now. What happened is essentially they diluted and destroyed many of our organizations. So there's no longer, quote unquote, a Black community because of gentrification, infiltration, and displacement. So people all over the place. That means that when we try to do things politically, we don't have a common nucleus. And that's a different challenge with social media and all other kind of challenges. But even having said that, in places like Georgia, where you have a 30% Black population, you can point to 5 cities: Atlanta, Macon, Augusta, Savannah, Valdosta. Bring folks together, you can win major elections and put Black folks in power. That's not the thing in most places around the country. So your community has been basically deciphered and destroyed. That's what he meant by that. That's what we're doing in Austin, Texas. This is a perfect example of disintegration.
Yeah,
you change the policies, you destroy people's institutions. Many ways you can make sure they don't function. You can even burn them down or destroy them.
Austin's done it.
Done it. Then you displace people. Then all of a sudden you don't have a critical mass. That's the African American quality of life. But once you document that, you've got to deal with it and you got to move forward and talk about, number one, how to build your own businesses and your own institutions, because that funds your struggle. See, we forget that if our businesses are functioning correctly and they haven't been allowed to, we can have our own resources. But at the same time, because we pay taxes, we should always demand that the city of Austin, County of Travis, and other folks contribute to us equally as well. Mm-hmm. But we got to understand what happened to that and make sure we connect beyond zip codes and boundaries. You can't let zip codes, affect your thinking. You got to go a lot further than that.
Agreed. Now, all right. So what about the commissioners' courts? Talking about our budget, right? Talking about money.
My favorite place, because the commissioners' court have some cohesiveness. And so because they're set up that way, you have a lot more access, but that's the county. Now the county basically overall, you have people like Ron Davis and Judge Biscoe, they've always done much better than the city of Austin. And that's the reason for that, because the county, basically, the resources, do have a critical mass of Black people. And that's their strength. But they have a different system. See, the city is a different game. It's more sophisticated. So the county, in terms of what it covers, although smaller, it has a lot more opportunity there in that particular concept. And we didn't understand that, but each has its own purpose. We have to see them all together. It's got to be comprehensive. With county, city, school district, they all work together. That's got to be our strategy in terms of going forward.
Okay, and the school district, can I share with you 2 instances that I've had over the last couple of weeks when I was, because I attend the meetings or I've got somebody who tells me what happened, or if something is really, I'm that person where it's like, if somebody hears some real messed up stuff, they'll just shoot me a little text, shoot me a message and be like, can you look into this? But so I got a friend with the school, working with school equity. And then I sat in on the Art and Music Joint Commission meeting. Mm-hmm. And so with the Joint Art and Music Commission, my thing that was really alarming, most everything was super, it was wonderful, but there was a particular attitude that floated in a couple of times. And every time somebody would step up to check it, one of the other commissioners would step in to kind of quell it in a very nice, kind way. They just kept on pushing it. And they were basically saying, so, I mean, since we're running low on funds, and we gotta, how is that gonna impact now that we have to consider now this new equity leg, like we are already low on funds. So why are we throwing that into the mix? It was an actual legitimately raised question by one of the commissioners. And I was like, so you're asking in front of everybody, why can't we put Black folks on the back burner? Why can't we put Black arts and cultures and Latino and Asian art and culture, and just, why do we have to focus on equity and diversity right now when we don't have money? Shouldn't we just keep all the money right now? They're not that important. That's what he said. Not in those exact words, but that's what he was implying.
Yeah.
And these are people that are sitting on these commissions. Now, what I was so glad to hear, like I said, is there were several people that pushed against that.
Right.
And they're like, because we have to, dog, because it's the right thing to do. But it was terrible. And then the other encounter that I had, it was a similar question when I've got a friend who's working very, very hard to bring equity and diversity and you know, to alleviate racial bias and all these things within the school system. Very, very hard. And has for 20 years, and her mama did too. And she's sitting there and she proposes and brings this project and is like, this is what we need to be working on. And they looked at her and was like, so can you tell me why is this important? I don't see how it relates to the work that we're doing here. This is what we're up against, Mr. Linder.
Right.
Does that mean I should have turned the table and that I should tell my friend that she needs like,
that situation is school work, they're a little different right now. You've got to take the information, organize it, come up with a plan of action. And that has a big impact on what we do. We've done it before. NAACP student Mike in the 80s. So you've got to monitor that process, get everything together, come up with the best practice. We've learned a lot. And so if you just take notes and inform people, people don't know. See, that's another problem. We basically don't know. We're not getting the information directly in terms of what to do with it. We got to build that process up and make sure we're at these meetings. We're taking notes. More importantly, we're going back to our institutions where they say, look, here's what's going on. We have a new superintendent, by the way. It's a whole nother conversation. But you got to make sure you get the information and go back to what the people are. That's how it always has worked in the past. We quit doing that, by the way. We stopped doing that. That's a problem.
But that's why I do this show right there. It's just exactly that. Like, look, I'm going to find out what it is and tell y'all. They can tell you themselves what it is. If you like it, great. But at least please be informed, as you always say. Like, be informed. Make informed decisions based on facts, data, evidence, things of the like. So let's shift gears just a moment.
Sure.
Let's talk about APD.
APD, okay.
All right. Are we starting the class and getting a new chief? How do you feel about where we are in that process?
Well, I think the right thing was, we said this for years, got to revamp the academy, because that's where the teaching occurs. And I say that by saying this: when David Joseph was killed, shot while he was naked by a black officer,
that could have just gotten back in his car.
Exactly. But once you commit to those kind of things, it tend to get worse. But they say, well, under 9.51 with the Texas Penal Code, if you feel threatened, you have a right to defend yourself. That's what they always say all over the country based on penal codes. Officer Vader, to his credit, was pissed off. He went down to the academy and said, wait a minute, man, wait a minute. If you see a situation that you can resolve without killing somebody, you have a right to do so. You can step back if you need to. I even tell him, I said, look, man, help me out a little bit, Chief. I'm about 5'10", 215. This kid is 15 years old. He's obviously on something. First of all, I don't get out of my car, but if I do, he comes at me at full speed. He's naked. I'm not putting my weapon. I'm going low. I'm going to have to engage him. If I can't fight for 5 minutes, I don't need to be in the police force.
Facts.
And he got me. All these guys got to have certain kind of training with self-defense where they can disarm people without killing people. That was a great conversation. So back to that curriculum now, they're going to begin to address diversity. Instructors like you and me who understand our culture, and folks also who understand verbal techniques and hand-to-hand defensive mechanism. So that's what the academy is for. So coming out of that, that's going to have a great impact. But here's the other problem. You have to examine your current ranks. Studies tell us that if you have an early warning system to tell you who's doing the wrong things, it's already cops, keep an eye on them, you can catch them before they kill somebody.
Yep.
But without an early warning system, you're going to slip by every time you're going to read about it in the newspaper. So while we're building the academy, let's also scrutinize the current police force to make sure that people like Mike Olson, who killed Kevin Brown back in 2007, he had hurt like 3 or 4 people, can't be police officers. People like Stan Farris, who killed Johnny Connell in 1998, got hurt like 2 other people. Those kind of folks have to go. But that's an internal process that we have to do ourselves with the police monitor's office and also the academy. Those 2 things work hand in hand. So right now they're on the right path. And the other thing is getting a police chief. You can argue either way. You bring somebody in. And I tell folks, while I understand that concept, you better be careful. In Fort Worth, you had a lot of cowboys up there. It was killing a lot of people. They brought a brother in from Boston who was a very sharp guy. He was a very sharp guy. They put him in that culture situation. They hadn't addressed it. And they ate him up. made him ineffective, basically fired him unfairly. He got a big settlement. So what I'm saying is, if you bring folks in who knew, you got to make sure that they are protected. That's one angle. The other angle is, if you hire somebody locally, you can do that, but at this point in time, you might want to be very careful about both of those things. If you can't bring in one person to clean up an institution, it's got to be a collective process. So therein lies our challenges. You want to hire the best candidate who has the best background, who has the full support of city government to do what needs to be done, which is number one, make sure that these people don't use excessive force against Black and brown people, and make sure they follow the law. Just think about me feeling threatened. Well, you got to put yourself in the right position where you don't feel threatened, and that's a mental thing anyway. And secondly, for example, if a person has a knife, you got a certain amount of space. Why are you shooting them? And once again, I know there's a risk involved, but when you are a police officer, you take certain risks because human life is primary. We need to have more engagement and disarmament as opposed to just shooting at people. It's too easy in this nation, in the city, to shoot people. That's number one. It's too easy. It should be a last resort. So self-defense, physical fitness, mental preparation, and learn how to engage people without, first of all, killing people. That's the mentality.
And that's the focus they're making. Those are like some points that they're like specific points that they've addressed in the
exactly. Training. That's what we've fought for 20 years, by the way.
Yeah, see, none of this is new. That's what gets me so worked up about it. That's why it takes me like I go from 0 to 104 seconds, because it's like, none of this is new. These are all things that people have been bringing to the city government. These are all things that all these city organizations have been working on, and then taking compromises on them because that's all we could get. And because people don't understand the whole process, they're like, well, you were screwing us over on these things. And it's like, well, yeah, but it was what we could get. And so then the community's like, well, why didn't you try to burn down the tables and make everything different? It's like, well, we did. And then they tried to kill somebody. You know, there's just all these different layers to it that this is not new. It is not new. But
if I may go ahead, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
That's a brilliant point. I love track and field. I love athletics. You watch a good relay team, how they hand that relay off, baton off. It's an art to it, how they do it. And if you mess it up, you're going to lose the race. But it's an art to having a team that works together that knows how to do it. Exactly. Let me shift back to social policy. Anytime we have new organizations, new situations in our city, there's a baton that needs to be handed off, understood. Because oftentimes, you don't read the baton, you might be creating something that already exists. Rather than saying, wait a minute, this process started 10 years ago, we never got the right results. We ain't going forward until we deal with this. So it's all about taking credit for it. If we're talking about use of force in 2005 and 6, why are we having the same conversation now? Some folks don't know. They think they're actually doing something new. So if you don't understand that baton and what it means, you'll be fighting these same problems every generation. And unfortunately, we ain't being reincarnated no time soon.
Man.
So make sure you know where you're coming from, what's being done, and don't go forward until you understand where you are. This is where we left off. This is where we're going to start.
So that's why I've been like, I tell you, like when I say it's not new, it's because I'm in everybody's faces all the time saying, well, what have we been doing? Well, what is this? Well, what are y'all working on? Well, how can I, all of this. And there's been so much work. And I get so annoyed. And I'm going to tell you the truth. I've left organizations before that do this type of work, like activism, because I'm looking at it saying, y'all are trying to reinvent the wheel. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. There's this, and this that are currently happening. Why don't we pull all of them together and us all work on that together? And they don't want to do it because everybody wants to be the one, they all want to be the one that did it. And it's like, no, it's not going to be one of us that does it. As long as we think it's going to be one of us that does it, it's not going to get done.
It's not going to get done. You're right. Absolutely correct.
It drives me mad. Like I'm sitting here looking at all these talented, and it's like, and I see like when you talk about passing the baton, I'm like, and I can tell that the generation that was doing this work before, I can tell that y'all are getting frustrated. I can tell that y'all are sitting here looking at us like, just like, if y'all would just sit down and listen for just a minute, like if y'all would just sit down and just a minute, and I'm sitting there.
And that's a very delicate process as well. And I can tell you this, the energy of being young is a total positive thing to have. You need that energy to push you forward. Also, on the other hand, the memory of the past and lessons learned and mistakes made is equally critical. Those two things have to come together because Youth and knowledge is undeniable. Youth without knowledge is problematic. Right. Just like if you're an older person, use the energy to let these young kids push you forward. I always tell people, I don't feel 62. and Nick always teases me. He saw me on a presentation in 2005. He calls me Young Nell.
Young Nell.
It's flattering because I still have energy. I tell these kids, hey man, I feel great, but also I love to read and see, okay, on the battlefield, what mistakes did we make? And what can we do better?
Exactly.
Those things, the best generals do that.
Like, where did we stumble? Where did they get us? When I get ideas, I send them to people and I'm like, here, poke holes in this. Tell me why this won't work.
One of the most effective generals in history, a brother named Hannibal, he always studied battles in ancient Africa, okay? And that's how he defeated the Romans. But guess what? They got one of his brothers, just like him, to study this guy's techniques. What's his strength? What's his weaknesses? And guess what? They finally defeated him. So when it comes to black people, if we're trying to defeat white supremacy, what have we learned thus far that's effective? Because I can tell you something, ain't nobody perfect. So if you get the right tactics, you can defeat the opposition, but guess what? It ain't coming easy. It comes through understanding. Whether it be policy or police, you got to do your homework and make sure you're the most prepared person in that room. That way you make the right arguments and you get things done.
So that's why I think your passing of the baton is an excellent analogy, or handing off the baton, because there is a period of time where they're both holding on, where they're running next to each other and they're both holding it.
That's right.
And it's like, you've got the knowledge of, everybody's got the knowledge. Knowledge is easy. You can read a book, right? But then you have the wisdom from the application that you get from those that came before us. And when you, what is it? Knowledge plus wisdom is understanding, right? And that's the next step. So we have to have those both hands on the baton. It has to be the wisdom of those before us, and then the knowledge and the energy to make that understanding so that we can then defeat the man that brought the elephants across the Alps. So he's the one that did that, right? Is he the one that brought the elephants across the Alps?
And also, great point. I got a military book about 20 years ago. It has an actual picture of that battle. And I was talking to kids about Black history. And I said, look at this picture, what's wrong with it? Well, nobody knew what was on the picture. I said, okay, well, look at all the combatants there. Now, you see no Black people, and you got white folks riding elephants. So what these folks did is they took out the Africans, put white folks on elephants. They could confuse the hell out of you. So you got to know the history. See, you got to know the history.
One of the greatest, most vicious and effective ever. But he sure did bring them elephants across. But they were Black folks. It was Black folks. And that's like,
that was unprecedented.
It's amazing. It was amazing. But we are capable of great humans in general when we get focused on a set mission and when we're in line with good. Miracles happen, and that's I don't want to get all weird and stuff like that, but
no, you're right.
When it's right and when it's good, and you get the people, I believe that love is gonna win, and we're gonna keep fighting and all this, and it's not, maybe it's not gonna be like this quick magical fairy dust and everything is better, but I do believe we're coming to a point where we're almost at that tipping point that you kind of speak about, the tipping point where everybody puts their heels in, is like, this is no longer acceptable, so that the folks, the powers that be, have no choice but to go in their back room and do that spruce up, clean up thing that you're talking about. They'll just be sprucing up and cleaning up the things that we actually care about to a real level, instead of the little Band-Aid stuff that they've been doing. So I feel that coming. I'm hopeful, but let me see, let me look at our time. Okay. Sorry, I can talk about everything. Like, Mr. Linder, what about this? And what about this? And what about this? Let me see here. If you could say like one thing when we're talking about gathering our mission, and because it is a battle, we each have jobs, we each have roles, we each have our branch in this battle. Do you have any suggestions on how we can help to find our space in this?
Sure. Look, despite what we say sometimes in our frustration, we need that to be healthy, need to come out, not go in. You know, we still have the ability to solve all of our problems. I have to remind people, we know our history from 1600 forward in this country, know what that's been with the English and with the Spanish as well. But here's the other thing. For 4,000 years, we ruled the earth, ruled the entire planet. We let folks in because they were human beings. We took advantage of it, but we let them in anyway. So us being in this despair is only a short period of time in the scope of time. This is not your permanent condition, but it does require certain things. You can't change this till you make a commitment. I don't care what you know, what you say, until you make a commitment, you ain't going nowhere. Short story. My background is business, insurance, and some banking. I saw so much despair among Black folks in the city when I came here. I said, you know what, man, I can't sit here and write insurance checks and not address what's happening to my people. As a result, I split the atom. I got into civil rights, history, NAACP, and I kept my insurance agency. So what I'm telling folks is no matter what you want to do with money, I hear that a lot of money is okay, but it's really bigger than that. When you have an attitude that says, you know what, I want to help my people the best I can. We all make mistakes. We do have a standard. You can't give me the excuse after doing the same thing. I'm going to help you, but I do have some preconditions. So what I'm saying is we're in a very unique opportunity to get things done. That's why this Black embassy concept is so important. And I got to say this. We got a unanimous vote. Okay, we're going to take a look at this. I'll tell these young brothers, let them come back and show their hand. I want to see what's in it. If they're late, that's okay. They've been late before. Don't you try to preempt the process. And no, don't show your hand. You've already showed your hand. When Spencer Trump comes back to the table, we want to see what he has.
He has till August. He's got till August for that, right?
But he's going to probably be late. They always are. So no matter. This is a big issue. When you see his hand, don't put pressure on yourself. If you don't like it, we can analyze it and make him go back and get it right. So don't put any pressure on yourself. The ball is in their court. That's my advice.
I love that because we always get this kind of, like you said, we have to all reactive, we get this sense of urgency where we're like, oh my gosh, I got to get it while I can. No, we are stopping. We are slowing down. Y'all are going to follow the laws. Y'all are going to follow equity. Y'all are going to do what's right. And we're going to sit here and look at you till you get it done. And here's some suggestions after you tell us what you've got in mind.
That's right.
Just like get them. And then I also like that attitude about things too, because when you let a person talk, they'll tell you who they are. And
absolutely.
And my granny always said, it's best to know that you've got a rattlesnake in your pocket because then you can behave yourself accordingly. Rattlesnakes aren't bad. You just got to know how to act around them. So that's
they exist in our environment. So yeah.
They're part of the environment. They're part of it, and they got to eat too. I get it, but I want to know if that's what that is, so I know not to like stick my hand in there, without absolutely. Looking. Absolutely. So I'm down for that. I can do that. It's like, let me sit back and just watch a minute. Say what y'all got to say about it, and I like that. And like I said, they'll show you who they are. They'll show you here. Like I said, sitting in these meetings, if I hadn't sat there and listened to that man say that he thinks Black folks should be on the back burner, then I wouldn't know that he thinks Black folks should be on the back burner. So just let them talk, right? And then we can get rid of the folks that put the stuff up if it's some garbage, and I'm all about it. Show me what you got. I'll keep all my stuff close to vest. But all right. Well, thank you so much. I'm encouraged, believe it or not. It's like, we can do this. We just have to stay focused. I'm looking forward to the common mission as a city, as activists, as advocates, as people that just want better for our city. I'm looking forward to that. Can you tell us where we can find you, your website information, all that stuff, please?
Oh, sure. Really, the website is NAACPAustin.com. But I'm also on Facebook. It's Nelson Linder Facebook. I got constant updates. Also, I'm on East 4th Street. I'm always talking to people about what I see, what I know, those kinds of things. So I'm pretty accessible, really. I have a hotline number, which is my cell phone, by the way, 512-695-6674, because I get a lot of emergency phone calls all over the country. When folks are calling you in pain, they don't want to hear voicemail. When I see those numbers sometimes, my heart tells me I need to answer the phone. There might be somebody who's suicidal, who are desperate. So we got to communicate. We got to quit giving folks these automated numbers. And if we can, sign us in our phones and talk to people, because you never know where somebody's at. I'm very serious about that.
Yeah. No,
so be accessible as much as you can be.
Because y'all are real people, right? And it's, for me, it's problematic. Like, if y'all are going to call yourselves, and I'm saying y'all as a lump, you know, but like, community leaders need to be accessible to the communities that they're leading, period. Or else how do they know? Like, how do you know what the folks want if you're not talking to them? So I appreciate that a great deal. So thank you, Mr. Nelson Linder, president of the Austin chapter of the NAACP. Thank you for all of your work. Is there anything, one last thing, direct action, something we can do in the next 5 days to impact change?
I think right now, pay attention to the city council on this homeless policy, and also demand equity, and begin to look at the Black Embassy and what's coming down the pipe pretty soon. And you prepare for that by studying what the resources are, and you get leaks from everybody and find out what they're doing. But don't panic, be patient, do your homework, and remember, this is poker. Don't show your hand, because at this point, they've got to show theirs. Be patient, don't turn on each other. I mean, you got to pay the price first. This is a battle, this is a marathon, so stay focused on the goal, don't break rank, and encourage folks who are fighting to hang in there. That's important.
Hang in there, Mr. Linder. Keep fighting the good fight. That's my encouragement. But thank you. I'm encouraged. You, sir, be encouraged. We're gonna get it. We're gonna get it.
Keep doing the work that you do. This is tough work. I love your show.
Thank you, sir.
Let me know how I can be helpful. I appreciate what you do.
Thank you. We'll be talking again.
I look forward to it.
All right. Have a great week. Thank you for joining me on the Hash Special Community Matters Edition.
Well, keep hashing it out, okay?
Yes, thank you. Perfect. Have a great day, sir.
Thank you.
Peace be.
Take care. Be safe.
Yes, sir. You too.
All right.